This meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Roll call by the clerk, please.
Kerry McGee,
Yes.
Greg LeBoissonier,
Here.
Deb Bacon,
Here.
Gary Cody,
Here.
Ann Dixon's absent, Nicholas Gorham,
Here.
Ed Wazika.
Here.
Okay, Town Sergeant, if you would kindly lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. You all stand and remove your headgear. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For all those who want to remain standing, Lord, we ask that you help this council make decisions that are in the best interest of the taxpayers. We also ask your blessing for the first responders and for our military people who are given us the freedom that we are enjoying this evening. And that we ask, Lord, amen.
Amen.
Emergency evacuation plan. Okay, President's comments are going to be brief tonight. We had a meeting this past weekend with a couple of council members and a couple of school committee members discussing the budget, discussing how the two departments have to work together and promote this budget and present a reasonable budget. We decided that we cut municipal budget last week at a hearing as much as we could, and the schools are committed to cutting their budget as much as they can to run it legally. So there was no figures discussed. It was more or less a commitment to work together on passing the budget, because we have an all-day referendum, and we need to present a reasonable budget, and we realize that, being an all-day referendum, we want to present a budget that's going to be able to work for all the taxpayers in town. So basically, it was a good meeting, just supporting each other and not having the schools and the municipal side work against each other. We want to promote a budget, and they've committed. We still have a couple of more work sessions, and once again, we have not had very good turnout, so I encourage the public to please come in, join, give us your ideas. There are a couple more scheduled. I don't have it right with me, but it's on our website when our budget hearings are on, so I encourage people to come join us. Contrary to some of this misinformation given on Facebook, again, of course, if it's on Facebook, you believe it, about all these illegal meetings, we have done nothing illegal. We're trying to work together and promote this budget in a respectable way. So with that being said.
And with respect, Mr. President, we need to emerge from executive session and seal the minutes.
You're absolutely right.
Thank
Okay. Okay, I forgot about that. So the chair will entertain a motion to come out of executive session.
So move.
We have
Second.
a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Well, out of executive, the chair will entertain a motion to seal the minutes for executive
Move to
session.
seal the minutes.
We have a
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Seal the minutes. Okay, the next item on the agenda, I believe that I am going to bring a couple of items from Section D up to the beginning of the meeting. So there's a few people here that will want to get in and out of the meeting, have prior commitments. So I'm going to ask for a motion that we bring D1, 2, and 5 at this time. The chair will entertain a motion to move them up into this position.
I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. We'll move them up. Okay, the next order of business then, Madam Clerk, would you please read D1?
Resolution reappointing Jean Belanger as Judge of Probate for the Probate Court of the Town of Coventry.
Okay, we had decided several months ago, we were going to put out some resumes for new judgeship. Being that this is a political position, and we have decided, and me as the president have spoken to other members, we have the votes, we're completely comfortable with status quo. I'm not going to waste everybody's time to interview people when I know we have the votes to install the judges that are already in place. We're completely happy. I personally have the utmost respect and trust in the two judges that we have, and I believe the rest of the council, or most of the council will. So with that, before we ask for a vote on this, is there any comments from anybody from the council? Yes.
What are we doing with all the resumes that we received? Have we reached out to all those attorneys that applied for the municipal court and probate judge?
No, we have not. They just put the application in. We're not required to return the letter to them. They put the application, it's like a work application, and we're not required to send them, a letter saying that they haven't received the position. When they'll know it, when they see it made public that if we appoint the judges, they'll know it.
So why wasn't this discussed in executive session? All of our boards, commissions, any appointments we discussed in executive session? Why wasn't this put on the executive session?
Because we weren't gonna waste everybody's time. I knew we had 3 votes. We were completely confident. The leadership decided to put it on the agenda, and if you don't agree with it, you certainly have the right to vote against it, but we thought it was the right thing to do. We've been going quite a long time without swearing in our judges, and it's time. So, I mean, you completely can vote.
Well, I'm just wondering, because we
Yeah.
always
No,
have,
I
they
mean-
come in, we interview, and then,
But
but
we
we-
were fine with status quo, and I just didn't want to waste everybody's time bringing in. I know.
well, I'm kind of concerned, though. How did you know you had the votes prior to that?
Just to discuss with people. My job as a president of council, I can discuss with people individually about different situations and in speaking with people. I know we had the votes, so I decided to.
You didn't reach out to me.
No, you know what? We learned to count to 3. That's all I had to do.
Got it.
That's the way it is, because I know you're not going to agree with it. You were one advocating to have the resumes and interview
How would you know
judges.
we advocate,
This is the time
as
for
a-
discussion. We can have
Well,
discussion.
we're having the discussion,
All right,
because
and as the president of council, I decided to put it on the agenda. If there's an issue with it, now's the time to bring it up. Obviously, you have an issue with it, that's fine, but
I was just asking why it wasn't on executive session, and what
I
we're
didn't
doing
feel the
with.
need to. I didn't feel the need to. I just, as president of the council, I decided
And
to
out
put it
of
on
just
the
common
agenda.
courtessy, is the town going to send all of these attorneys a letter saying that
If
the
the
position
solicitor
has been
thinks it's
filled?
necessary, I don't see it's necessary, but do you think it's a necessary thing, Mr. Solicitor? I personally don't, but I'm not,
I mean, we accepted all, we advertised in Rhode Island.
it was 8,
Lawyers-
9 months ago. I mean, the people must realize that they had to get the job. I mean, it's been quite a while that the resumes were out.
Well, it's professional
Yes,
courtesy.
please, sir.
To answer the question, the appointment of both the probate judge and the municipal judge is within the discretion of the council. They don't have to conduct interviews in closed session or open session, and they are free to reappoint if they wish the judges who are already serving in that capacity. They're really, and to answer your question a little more specifically, the fact that a resume has been offered by various candidates, that doesn't require the town council to interview them. The town council might correctly conclude that there is no need to do any interviews because they're satisfied with the judges who they already have, or the judge or judges. It's really up to the council.
Oh, the
It's
council
purely
did vote.
If you look at the charter, there's nothing that says that they have to do this, and there's nothing in state law that says they must conduct interviews and they must review resumes. They don't have to do that. It's among the powers that the council has unconditionally to appoint.
Oh, well, we did vote to advertise and accept it. So, there's one thing, what we legally can do, but really what is the right thing to do? We accepted all those resumes and we actually just left them hanging there. Do you have something to say, Richard Pacelli? Because you seem to have a lot to say.
All right, we're not going to get
Well,
into
you're-
we're not going to get discussion. Address it to us. We're
Well,
discussing it.
he's
We're
got
not
a
gonna
lot
get
to
into an
say, so-
argument with- I know,
I'm not
but
getting
it's-
into an argument, but he seems to want to
Well,
interject in our business
Address
meeting.
it to me. Any comments? And are you having more comments? Any other comments?
No,
Joe?
I just
The
think.
offering of a, just to make clear, the offering of a resume does not entitle anybody to an interview. That's just not the way the world works, and it's not the
Oh,
way. It's not the
understand that,
way
but
that
we're just-
interviews for the judgeships of the town work either. I know it sounds harsh, but it's really that's really true. If you read the charter, it
Well,
just
if
says.
if the council had no intention, I mean, it was kind of a waste of time, possibly money, I don't know what the cost was, to go and advertise when they had no intention of doing interviews, so it's kind of a little misleading, in my opinion.
I'm not passing judgment on that. I'm telling you what the rule is here that's being applied. And
Okay,
that's
no,
it.
I'm just offering my
The virtue
opinion.
or wisdom of
Apparently,
things is
it
for
was a
everyone
waste of
else to
time for
decide.
everyone.
Well,
But thank you.
the decision to send out resumes was done well before our new council was in place, so the situation has changed. So does any other council members have any discussion, any comments to say, Cody? So the chair will entertain a motion to, for the probate judge.
Motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Mr. Belanger, would you be so kind as to come in and be sworn in, please? Sir, you raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that you will be true and faithful to the laws and Constitution of the United States of America and of the United States of the State of Rhode Island and of the Home Rule Charter and Ordinance of the Town of Coventry, so help you God, as a municipal judge, probate judge? Congratulations, sir.
John?
Okay. Next order of business, Madam Clerk, would you read number 2, please?
Resolution reappointing Arthur Capaldi as municipal court judge for the municipal court of the town of Coventry.
Are there any discussions, any concerns?
Motion.
Do you have a motion?
I'll give a second, but I need to make a statement.
Okay, make a statement before we,
Absolutely. The last year, and any discussion regarding the municipal court judges, I had sought an opinion from the Ethics Commission regarding my being able to vote for that, and they said that I should recuse myself because I had an ongoing business relationship with Judge Capaldi at Gabriel's Trumpet Catholic Bookstore. Since that time, Judge Capaldi has resigned after volunteering for 19 years so that way we would not have a conflict. And in my discussions with the attorney for the Ethics Commission, we determined, and she said that I am able to vote now because we, quote, have no ongoing business relationship in the future at Gabriel's Trumpet, and that was the main point, was if we had any ongoing business, which we do not. So I feel comfortable in voting, which is why I am not recusing myself from this vote at this time.
so we have a motion, and we have a second. Any other comments? We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. Motion carries. Judge Capaldi, would you be so kind? Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that you will be true and faithful to the laws and Constitution of the United States of America and of the State of Rhode Island and of the Home Rule Charter and ordinances of the Town of Coventry, so help you God, as municipal court judge? Congratulations, Judge. Thank you very much. Okay. Madam Clerk, would you please read number 5, please?
Resolution authorizing the interim town manager of the town of Coventry to award, bid, and execute agreement to install an electronic access gate at Briar Point, Park Beach with statewide fence builders.
Mr. Manager, would you like to enlighten us on this, or you want to call Rainer up? or-
Certainly, this is last. 2 weeks ago at the previous meeting, it was discussed as far as an additional $3,000 that was needed to cover the cost of this electronic gate at Briar Point. Raina was here and went through the whole process. What we're simply here to do tonight is to, after an RFP was put out, and Rainey, you had what, 3 bidders on this?
2 bidders came in.
2 bidders on this. The low bid is Statewide Fence Building, Inc. of Harrington Ave, Warwick, and we're proposing that they be awarded the contract as the low bidder for this after an open competition.
We did hear your discussion last month.
Those are the specifications that we discussed last time. It was for
Okay.
that
All right.
particular.
Are there any questions concerning this? I know we heard the explanation from Rainer and her assistant last meeting. I guess there was a couple, we had to discuss it and then open the bids and so on. So are there any, if there's no discussions, then the chair will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second? Second. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. That was quick.
Thank you.
Thank you, Raina.
Thanks, Ren.
Okay. Now we'll go back to our agenda and we'll have a finance director's update for number
We've
4.
got minutes.
I'm sorry, okay, the approval for the town council minutes from February 25th, 2019. The chair will entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve?
Are there any, we have a motion, we have a second?
I'll second with some changes.
Okay, we have changes, why don't you go ahead and mention your
Okay,
changes?
on page 10, page 3 of the minutes, I've already given it to the clerk, just a correct spelling of Mr. Cicadar's name at that point. And then also, to clarify the final vote of the evening, which had to do with the tax stabilization, when our solicitor brought it up and said that, I didn't repeat it. So just to be entered into, I'd like it entered into the amendment to the minutes to just to clarify exactly what the vote was for, and you have the amendment to the minutes in front of you. And doing
I
that.
have
So.
them.
And if you'd like me to read them, sure. In accordance with the solicitor's recommendation, a motion was made by Vice President LaBoissoniere to approve the consent order and resolution with findings under all 3 sections of the tax stabilization statute, and seconded by Councilmember Dixon. Member Cody, Vice President LaBoissoniere, President McGee, and Councilmember Dixon voted aye. Councilmember Bacon voted nay. The votes were 4 in favor, 1 opposed. President McGee announced that the motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any
I
comment?
thought Ann Dixon voted nay.
No, she did not.
Are you sure?
I'm not sure, I mean,
No, from what I recall, it was 4
Clerk,
to
you
1.
have the minutes.
Yeah,
I
she
mean,
had
if-
the original.
If you find out that was wrong for some reason, we'll address it at a later time, but
Well, it would be in the regular minutes on the end of what we had there.
Ann voted aye.
I don't think Ann voted because she had
what page would it have been on? Yeah, no problem, we'll wait a minute. What page would it be on in here?
It's
minutes,
it's the last page. of the
25,
minutes.
probably. Page 25? Yeah, the last paragraph, which is in there, it
This is
states
the
that,
paragraph you just amended.
yeah, we just amended that last paragraph to add that, and it shows votes were 4 to 1 against. Motion passes.
Okay, so it clarifies that. All right.
Right.
4 to 1 in favor. I think it was. It was 4 to 1 in favor.
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, 4 to 1 in favor, right.
Okay,
Yeah, 4, 1 against.
Correct.
with that being said,
Is the town clerk checking on that? Because she just left?
to get her packet.
Okay.
Paperwork and things, but yeah.
Well, but the original minutes that she had has that as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had that it was 3 to 2.
do you have it any different,
Okay.
Madam Clerk?
It's, all it's listed, that she has listed is, the only opposition was Councilwoman Bacon, is all that's listed on there.
All right, and if,
I would check with Ann on that because I'm pretty positive she also voted no.
We
All right, we
can,
can
yeah,
check
we
with
can
her.
ask her, and she can offer up another amendment at a later date. That's
Okay,
fine.
no problem.
So,
Okay, so we have a motion.
And a
We have a
second.
second. Is there any more discussion? Okay, all in favor?
aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Okay. The next item will be the Finance Director's update.
Good evening. So this update is very quick. It's just to update on some of the questions that were posed during the last status update on the expenses, the revenues, everything that was going on at the last meeting. So rather than trying to address it and doing everything a month from now, I decided to bring it up again and provide the council their own packet on all the details and everything like that. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up the explanations and back up.
Oh, good, more papers.
That's it.
Thank you.
So the information that I passed out, it's more homework, I guess, for you all. It's essentially all the requests that came forward. So, for example, the contingency fund expenses breakdowns that were brought up as far as concerns. What I did was I had the deputy treasurer go through, print out all the journal entries, the backup documents, the checks, and things of that nature for all the supporting documents for all the transactions. As you'll see, there's about 20,000 transactions at that time. So it's kind of hard to remember every single transaction. So that's why I decided to just bring full support for all of them. The request for water reimbursement description and support, it was correct. It is actually revenue from tipping fees and things of that nature regarding the landfill. That is also inside the packet. The Industrial Development Commission description that was on the revenues, that is actually regards the land trust. So it was part of the land trust, it was part of the planning department. When that report was generated years ago, I guess, the description in there has not changed since. It's in Excel, so it's pretty quick and quickly can be changed to actually show the land trust. But that was a revenue stream that goes to the land trust. So essentially the way that it works, if you have any questions regarding that, I can easily explain how that works as well. Transfers between funds and the documentation that was actually specifically regarding, and again, you have all the documentation in that too, is between the schools for impact fees, so between departments. So those are the vast majority of the information there, so take it home, review, have any questions, please let me know. There's a lot of information that is going around. Go ahead.
They give us the homework. We don't give them the homework.
Yeah, you gotta get that straight, yeah.
Okay,
It's a little backwards.
apologize.
Just for the record,
Yes, sir.
you kind of work for us.
I forgot. Apologize.
Okay, I mean, are there any questions you want?
I just wanted to make it as, again, in terms of transparency and going forward, I know that being transparent is of utmost importance to myself and everybody here. So in light of that, I decided instead of just providing one specific transaction, here it is, everything. And if you have any more questions, feel free. I have no problem.
Putting the time into it, and we will digest it along with everything
Absolutely.
else, the budget, so, I don't know if anybody has any questions this time on it. If not, no, me neither, so, all right, so,
There was just a lot to go, and there's so much going on that to get it inside the packet, to get it out to you all in much time, it would, in light of the time constraints with the budget season and everything like that, as a special request, if there are any more special requests, it might just, a little understanding that it might take a little time gathering extra information with how constrained our budgets are going forward. There's a lot going on in the Treasury Department right now and the Finance Department, so be understanding is all I'm asking.
point taken. Okay, if
All my
nobody has any
bosses.
questions, thank you very much. I
Thank you,
appreciate it.
John.
Thanks, John.
Okay. The next will be a presentation by Paul Dansereau from Baxter and Dansereau and Associates on our 2018 audit presentation. Dansereau, if you'd be so kind as to introduce yourself and,
Okay.
I'm gonna have to get you a desk here.
seem like we
Well, I
just
think
met
we
like
even
this.
have, this year, I think we even have a little more descriptive introduction here, which I'll go through and everything. Okay. But
I'm fine with it.
I can see the board.
You can see it. That's-
It's my ears that are bad, not my eyes.
I'm good. We got it on paper, so we can read it. Okay. Okay, Mr. Dansville, please.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you to the town and the council for allowing us to be here, because obviously we're here at your pleasure, and we're glad to have been engaged to perform the audit for the town's financial statements as of the fiscal year ended 6/30/2018. Also, I'd like to thank the finance director, John, and his staff, because obviously without their providing information, documentation, things like that, we would never get the audit done. And also on the school side, Sarah Mangiarelli, we'd like to thank her and her staff, because obviously they have their own sets of books on the school side. So by putting all these information together for us to audit, because obviously the town's financial statements, we audit the books to make sure there are no material misstatements or anything like that. If we go with the PowerPoint presentation here, you'll see up there my name is Paul Dansereau. I'm a partner with the auditing firm or the accounting firm of Baxter, Dansereau and Associates. I've been doing audits of cities and towns for over 20 years now. And before that, I was in the private sector as a controller, vice president of operations in a private company, getting myself audited at that time. So I know both sides of the audit. I used to prepare the documents, as John does, to get audited, and now on the other side. Our firm is a member of the Governmental Audit Quality Center, and the center is a group run by the Government Accounting Standards Board that makes firms that are members of this provide extra information, documentation, things like that within our audits. We get peer reviewed every 3 years by an external firm that does peer reviews. They come in and they look at our firm's quality control on how we prepare audits, the documentation we have that shows that we've done our continuing education for this type of audit, governmental audits, information like that. So they come in and they give us an opinion on our firm and how we prepare for audits. So there either is a pass or fail. There's no A, B, C, or D. You pass, that's your grading, and every year we pass, we offer up the opinion of our firm to all potential audit clients so they can see that we've been audited, our audit quality is up to the standards that are required by the center. And not every firm is a member of the center. Some do it, some don't. And we decided it was a better thing for us to make sure that our firm is meeting or surpassing the audit quality standards that are out there. So in brief, that's what we do. In an audit timeline, as you can see here, our audit was performed as of 6/30/18. We audit the financial statements of which I'll go through in the financial statements, but we go through the governmental activities, which I'll describe, each major fund, going down to government activities, the business type activities, each major fund and the aggregate remaining fund information, and the notes to the financial statements too. And the notes are very important. You see numbers, on the balance sheets, you see numbers on the statement of net position, all that. Numbers are great, but the notes describe your accounting policies, how the Government Accounting Standards Board works, because they're the governing body. They come out with all new standards every year. Like 2-3 years ago, they came out with new pension standards, GASB 67 and 68, which made all cities and towns put their total unfunded liabilities on their books. Before, it used to be just the net OPEB obligation, which was a variation of the liability that was owed, and not the future economic impact that it had on every community. So those are the types of standards that they come out every year to try to give more clarity of the town's financial situation. The bonding agencies love that because now it's giving a long-term economic look at how the town situation, their liabilities, their assets, and financial information like that is being presented, and what those liabilities or assets are. The objective of our audit is to express an opinion on your financial statements. That's really the only thing we do that is ours in here, is the opinion on the financial statement. So we can either give a modified opinion, which is what we'll say is that if there's something materially that we see within the financial statements that has not been corrected by the town after we suggested or something like that, we may modify the opinion. Like, for some reason, say you didn't follow the new standards for the pension reporting, and you said, no, we're not going to do it. Obviously, we would modify your opinion and put a qualification on that opinion saying everything else looks good except that, and they didn't put their full pension liability on. So those are the types of modifications we may do for your financial statements if we see something materially misstated and it's not corrected before the financial statements are issued. We look at things like internal control of the financial statements. How does the town process information? Do they pay by invoice? Do they pay by statements? Do they have someone sign off on a bill? Make sure that you do POs, things like that. Those are good, solid internal control things, or compliance issues that we look for, so we can rely that the information the town is giving us is correct. Because we don't go and do a forensic audit that we look at every invoice and say, okay, was this properly documented? We take sampling, we look at your budgets compared to your actuals to make sure we don't see any big variances in the budget to actuals, which would be an indication that maybe something is not right. We bring those to the attention of the finance director if we see things, maybe a classification wasn't done right, something like that. So we do internal control testing. We do sampling, items like that to make sure we feel comfortable that overall there's no improprieties going on that we see. Something small, something could happen, but we're doing testing and we're not testing every item. So we do internal control also in a single audit. Single audits are done on financial federal grants that you get. We have to, if you spend over $750,000 a year in federal money, that triggers a single audit. So we have to go in and look at the types of grants that you receive, which we'll go over in the back of the report, showing the school gets a lot of grants every year, repetitive grants, Title I grants for education, those types of things that you use every year to supplement your educational costs. And we may look at different programs every year to see if you're complying with those items that they list within those programs. It is usually about 13 items or 12 items that we have to look at to make sure the money is being spent right. And you'll see that in the back. We chose, I think last year, we chose 2 programs, and we call them major programs. These are programs that we look at in detail to make sure the internal control controls are there, basically, and the compliance that the federal government says you have to use that money for. Because you can't use educational money to go out and buy a new public works vehicle. Obviously, that would not fall under the compliance issues, and that would be a comment we would have to make on the use of those funds. So that would be the internal controls you'll see on there. Now we can get to the actual financial statements themselves, because these are all major components of the statement of net position called the government-wide financial statements. And you'll see those. Well, first of all, on page, I figured I'll go through the financial statements, and if you have anything that you would like to questions, please do after that. Or if you'd like to interject while I'm talking, that's fine also. I don't have a problem with that.
Paul.
So,
Paul?
Yeah.
Over here.
yeah.
we just had well, not just, but recently there's been a negative outlook put on our bond rating. What do you think, in your opinion, is the major driving factor for that?
Well, okay, I mean, many communities, when the pension reporting came out, okay, back about 3 years ago, it was, a large financial impact for many communities in the state, because now you had to put your full pension liabilities, unfunded pension liabilities on your books, okay? So, as you know, the town has pension liabilities for their police, their school, their
For our police, our SRP, and our municipal employees.
your municipal, yes.
Correct.
Obviously, those types of unfunded liabilities have a long-term impact on bond ratings. How the agencies look at that and say, okay, how are you going to fund this? And are you funded to a standard that is appropriate for pension funds?
Yeah, but we all know we're not.
Yes.
We all know we're not, but we entered into an agreement with the state of Rhode Island to fix the pensions over a period of time. And at one time, we had a negative outlook on our bond rating, and then it was lifted. It was taken off. And then, I don't know, last year, the negative bond rating was put back on. The pension obligation came to light in this town more than 3 years ago. So I'm just trying to ascertain for my own knowledge why or what, in your opinion, forced the negative outlook to be put back on our bond rating. Because we're not in a position to bond anything anyway. We're really not. But with the negative outlook that is on our bond rating, if and when we ever get in a position to be able to bond another project in this town, we're going to pay an increase in the interest that is charged on that bond because of that negative outlook on our bond rating. You just finished an audit for this town. In your opinion, what caused that to be put on there? The negative outlook to be put back on?
Well, I mean, there's multiple factors. Obviously, I'm not a bonding agent, but I know, obviously that pension liability, in the way it affected your net position also. When we go to the government-wide financial statements, you'll see the net position of the town is a deficit situation.
Yeah.
So they look upon that, and they look upon the percentage of the funding of the pension. And if they see your corrective action plan, they know that, but they look at the ability to the town maybe to raise taxes. How can you, I know they look at that. How could you raise taxes? Obviously, you have the ability to do that, but you have a cap also.
Right.
And looking at the budget growth within the town, they may say, okay, looking at your long-term obligations and your limited ability maybe to raise taxes, to fund those long-term obligations. They also look at your bond debt, okay? Obviously, bonds have to be repaid back.
Correct.
So they look at your bond debt compared to your budget, okay? How much money are you borrowed? What is that percentage compared to your budget? They'll look at that also and say, okay, is there a ratio there that seems to be not going in the right direction? That also. They look at the school department. They'll look at how the funding is for the school department, because obviously that's all part of the town. And they'll look at that and say, what are the reserves of the school department? How much room do they have should they have a budget crisis where they can't dip into reserves to cover their own deficit, say, if they had one.
Right.
And they look at your fund balance also, the town's fund balance, saying how much room do you have to sustain dipping into your reserves, just like the school. So those are other issues that they look at to say, okay, what's the long economic outlook for the town, and how are they able to sustain that type of growing budget.
Okay, thank you.
Can I
Okay.
Paul, I'm sorry, I just want to add, because this, the Moody's report, I have a copy of it, and I just wanted to add to it. Gary wasn't here, this was dated October 4th, 2018, when the council received it. It also says credit challenges, ongoing general fund support of sewer operations, large unfunded pension liabilities. And then under rating outlook, the negative outlook reflects the town's general government financial support of its sewer operations that has resulted in a decline in available reserve. So I think that probably answers, and, you know, we got this back in, so maybe the rest of the council, I know Gary and Ann could use a copy of this Moody's report.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, no, very good. Okay, so, like I was saying, we give the only thing in this document really is our opinion, and you'll see that on page 1, 2, and 3. Okay, within that, I had mentioned earlier that we could give a modified, unmodified opinion. Gladly to say we gave an unmodified opinion to the town, meaning we did not see anything that brought to our attention that there's material misstatements within the financial statements that we would need to qualify the opinion somehow. And when you give a qualification, you might not give a qualification on the financial statements as a whole. You may say, I'm giving a qualification on the sewer fund, say, because we don't see that the business type activities of the sewer fund being presented correctly. But like I mentioned, we gave an unmodified opinion. The only thing that we changed this year was on page 2, you'll see an emphasis of a matter. And you put one of those in the opinion to the financial statements to bring something to the attention of the reader of the financial statements, to say something has changed here this year that isn't, obviously nothing wrong with it, but the Government Accounting Standards Boards came out with GASB 75. Now, GASB 75 has something to do with the other post-employment benefits, meaning when people retire from the town, do they get provided medical? Do they get provided dental? How long do they get provided that? Do they get provided it for life? Do they come off that town-provided benefit once they turn 65? And those are all different calculations that the actuaries use to define that OPEB liability. So this year, that OPEB liability came fully on your financial statements, which I'll go into that. So that is not, and that's happening to every town, city, all across the country, but to all a different measure. Because certain towns give medical for life, and I've seen that also. And the struggle for them, and they've done that years ago, and the struggle for them is now it's unsustainable. You have people that retire at 55 years old, and they're going to be alive for 30 or more years, and you're covering them 100% medical for life. So obviously that's a struggle for many communities to provide that benefit. So things can change within these assumptions. Anything like with pensions also. Pension negotiations can be made for retirement age, for and this has to do with OPEB liabilities too. That can lower that long-term liability. If you change the retirement age to 60 years old, or if you were giving pensions for life, but now new hires will now only have pension OPEB liability benefits till they reach 65. So now that's a different assumption the actuaries use to lower that long-term OPEB liability, that long-term pension liability. So those things can be, because what actuaries do, they're using assumptions. They're using life expectancy rates. They're using raises within those, pension salaries and things like that, municipal salaries. So they use all various assumptions, which you'll see in the notes to the financial statements, a listing of the assumptions. But in discount rates, how much is your investment going to make that year also? If they change the discount rate, that could shoot up if they lower it, that could shoot up your pension liabilities, because now you're assuming you're not going to make as much on your investments within those within that trust fund that you have for. So many things come into play when the actuaries do and their standards that they use for life expectancies and things like that they all use. So those types of assumptions can adversely or, in a positive way affect the town's economic future also. So those are some of the components that are in the net position of the financial statements, which are shown. They begin on page 14. So up, as you see up there on the screen there, the statement of net position, or called the government-wide financial statements, is a full accrual, they call it, okay? A full accrual, just like a corporate document, balance sheet. What they do is they want you to put all your capital assets on here, meaning this building here, all your investments, your receivables, land, everything that the town has recognized under their ownership. And you put that up on the balance sheet. Even construction in progress. If you had a school that was being built, it wasn't finished yet, okay, all the monies that have gone into that building of the school is a CIP, construction in progress. It's not capitalized yet, it's not being depreciated yet, but it sits there because it's an expenditure that is not being recognized as we get to your fund financial statements, how that type of accounting works. But on here are all your pension debt also. So you have the municipal pension, the police pension, the SRP for the school. You have all your bond debt. When you borrow $40 million to build a new school, obviously that has to be repaid back. And interest goes along with that. So the interest is an expense. The bond debt sits up here on the balance sheet as principal. So you put $40 million on your balance sheet, and you say, okay, what is our payment over a 20-year period? So if you have to pay $500,000 down on principal every year on that $40 million, that $500,000 goes to reduce that long-term debt. And then if there's interest of $200,000 a year, that interest is an expense that goes on the profit and loss statement, basically. As so all this long-term debt that you have stays on the balance sheet. And you see on here is your OPEB liability, your other post-employment benefits that came on the books this year. That's $17 million. Okay. So that comes on the books this year, and what it does is it affects your net position. That's your equity section that is really, the overall equity of the town. So you put a liability on your books. What's the other side of that equation? You're putting $17 million on the books as a liability now, and that's your debit and credit sides. You're putting a credit on there as a liability. So what's the offset? What's the debit side of that? And the debit will be equity. So that reduces equity. That, will automatically reduce your equity. And that happened when the pension standards came through, that all that $100 million or whatever it is for some communities, you'll throw a credit there of $100 million, and the big debit goes right to your net position, your equity. So that had a huge financial impact for many communities in the state, in the state itself. The state itself has to do the same type of accounting for all, the different types of agencies they have, and the Auditor General audits those books for all the Lottery Commission, for all those types, the state revenues themselves. And we're doing the same thing here, obviously on a smaller scale, but still. So you see all that. And then the business type activities, that's the sewer fund, okay? The sewer fund is a full accrual already. So when we get to that, you'll see that all the assets, the interceptor lines, the buildings, things like that are already up on the balance sheet, just like in this presentation. So there's not really a modification or a change from the modified accrual basis, which is the way you budget really, to the full accrual accounting. And we'll come to a reconciliation that shows how you go from your modified accrual fund accounting and bring all your assets, your liabilities back onto your books and come out to this statement of net position, this government-wide financial statements. And the next page is really the profit and,
Can I just stop
Yeah.
you right here? I just have a question. With our net position, do you think we're financially healthy or stable?
well, a negative net position is not good. And the more that negative net position is, the worse it looks to the bonding agencies, to things like that. Individuals like that, financing agencies. So when they look at that, yes, that's not a good thing, a negative thing. But I have to admit that of many towns we audit, a lot of the biggest cities, that was a huge financial impact. And many communities are negative in their net position because of all the pension debt that has been accrued over the years. And a lot of towns were not funding fully their pension liabilities. They're 20% funded, they're 25% funded. And I'm sure, you've spoken to the state regarding, corrective action plans on how to try to get your funding up to at least the 60%, where the state says anything below, I think it's 60%, anything below that is critical, unfunded pension liabilities.
By any chance, do you happen to know where Coventry falls with other municipalities and their net pension? Do you have?
Well, we don't audit like Cranston. We haven't audited Warwick in quite a few years. I mean, you could go on, every town has on their website or on the state agency site, they post their financial statements online.
Okay.
So if you wanted to go, you go to ri.gov and you go to municipals and you go to governments and they list every city and town, and you just click on there and you go to usually their financial section, and they post their audits on there. So you can go there and I know I don't want to talk about other towns because you get in trouble that way sometimes. But other cities and towns have negative net position, and so in large net, negative net position. So
Yeah, I wasn't asking you to single anyone out. Just wondering where we fell at,
yeah,
that's all.
And I couldn't really say if
Okay.
you're in this percentage, or I'd have to sit there and look at every
Okay.
one of them.
Yeah, I just didn't know. I figured I'd ask.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, you've been doing this a long time for us, Paul.
Yes.
Until Treasurer Raimondo changed the formula on pension liability, Coventry didn't have that negative net to the size that we have now.
Well, it wasn't, there was pension reform in the state, yes. And I don't know all the specifics, but obviously pension reform for some communities, well, not for yours because you're private pensions, okay? You do have on here the school pension plan, which is part of the employment state plan. And that pension plan gets reported on here also. It's not just your private pensions, it's the state plan that's on here. Other communities, you're not in the municipal employees retirement system with the state. You have your own plan. So you have your own police, you have your own municipal plan, you have your own school plan, the SRP, but then the school has their plan with the state also. So the state puts out their own reports on pension liabilities that has to get reported in here. So when the pension reform came out, that actually lowered some of the state retirement plans, their unfunded liabilities. Right. So when the Government Accounting Standards Board came out with GASB 67 and 68, that forced that large number to be put on your books. Before, it was called the net pension obligation. And that was a kind of a hybrid type calculation that was used before Statement 67 and 68. And it just showed a number that was a lot smaller than this number. But when GASB 67 and 68 came out, they said you have to show your full unfunded liability. And that impacted everybody. Everybody had to implement at the same time, depending on this, there were like 2 years of implementation, but That affected everybody adversely. I mean, now the full unfunded liability was shown in your notes. So you're right, people kind of knew that number, the agencies knew, but it wasn't on your balance sheet and put right out there, I guess. You know, so that did have an impact on every community out there, except for, you know, communities, smaller communities who don't have maybe some large pension liabilities, something like that. But so that did have a big impact. So on the next page, page 15, is the statement of activities. The statement of activities complements the statement of net position because that's like the profit and loss statement of the financial statements. And what it does is it takes your full accrual accounting, meaning like a corporate book here, and puts it in a format. This format was all dictated by when the Government Accounting Standards Boards issued GASB 34. GASB 34 came out and added these types of presentations, these 2 pages, the management discussion and analysis that is in the earlier part of the financial statements. Those are all standards that came out that required the town, because if you didn't show it in this format, obviously that would be a problem and it'd be a modified opinion. So in here, you'll see a breakdown of expenses by function, they call it. General government, public safety, education, public works. And they have another column for charges for services. And that is saying, okay, what does this department generate in its own income? How much does it rely on property taxes to make its budget? So it shows charges for services. You'll see in here, you know, general government, public safety, obviously they issue tickets and things like that. Education gets money from the state in their, you know, every annual state funding. You'll see general government. The clerk's office generates monies from marriage licenses, dog licenses, all types of, you know, monies that come in that are specific to the clerk's office, say. You know, the parks and recreation, they generate money through programs and things like that. And then you have operating grants and contributions. Operating grants are the monies, like you'll see the school gets a lot of money in education. You'll see the general government gets education money. If you get grants like Cops More grants to help put another police officer on for a year or 2, that would go in that column. So those types. And then you come to the right side there and you'll see all negative because obviously these departments can't sustain themselves on their own. They rely on property taxes. So you'll see going down the sheet, you'll see real estate and personal property taxes, $72 million, interest on property taxes, investment earnings, and other miscellaneous items. And it comes right down to the change in net position, meaning, okay, how did the town do this year on that full accrual presentation? So there was a surplus of $106,000 that year, which, you know, reduces that negative net position. And you'll see that same thing with the business type activities, which is the sewer fund. You have your expenses, you have your revenues, you'll have the business surplus or deficit for the year. It had a deficit of $232,000 this year to reduce its net position to $11,057,000. So those are the full accrual way that, you know, the bonding agencies look at your financial statements. But another key factor will be on the next page, which is, well, not next page, I'm sorry, the balance sheet, there we go. On page 16. Now, this is more the traditional presentation of the financial statements because you use this to, you know, budget-wise. This is, they call it modified accrual because it's a short-term look at the future of the town's assets and liabilities, not a long-term economic look like the government-wide financial statements. There's on here are not any long-term type liabilities, any long-term assets. You'll see all the assets are gone, basically. Cash is there. taxes receivable are there, all short-term things. You'll see accounts payable. Accounts payable are usually a 2-month look out. These are bills that were incurred before June 30th, 2018, but were not paid until July, August. And so that's a short term. So we try to make sure that there's a proper cutoff there, that you're not holding back bills and paying them in, November because you don't want them on your books now. So we go outside the fiscal year and look at those things to make sure there are not bills being paid and after the year end that are liabilities of 6/30/18. So we'll go and look at that. Then you have below that, you'll have your fund balances. Okay, and now you'll see your fund balance of the general fund is $12,678,000. Within that, they came out, Government Accounting Standards Board, once again, came out with GASB 54. And they said, this was like maybe 4 years ago. And they said, you know what, we want you to categorize your fund balance within groupings. And they say these groupings are restricted for educational programs, committed for public works type funding. And those numbers reduce your unassigned fund balance because your total is 12 million, but those different components of those other types of categories take away from that 12 million and move it into those restricted or non-spendable type categories. Same thing with the school. School has all its assets on here. And then it has its fund balance also, which is $1,027,000. And if, like you'll see that non-spendable for prepaid, $637,000. Now that non-spendable means that they prepaid an item, and that was for the WB. They went and cut the check before the year ended for the July premiums. So obviously that's not an expense of the current year. You don't want to have 13 premium payments within a 12-month fiscal year. So that is put up on the balance sheet as a prepaid item, but it restricts their fund balance because those are committed monies. Those are committed funds that they can't go and say, oh, we can use them for next year's budget. No, they're already committed. They're spent. That's that premium for July next year. So that's why it's a prepaid item that takes away from that $1.2 million of fund balance. So really their unassigned or unassigned fund balance is the $390,000 they have there. And those are monies that obviously stay with the school because of state law. You can't go and say, oh, give me that money back now. But in a budgetary presentation, schools and towns use their fund balance to balance their budget. It's not an official gap, revenue, but it balances the budget. And I always, really don't. I always speak against that because if you go and you say I'm going to use $1 million of my fund balance for operations, what happens next year? Where do you get that $1 million for operations for next year? So anytime communities want to use fund balance, I say, okay, use it for a capital project, a one-time item. You got to put a new roof on the town hall. It's going to cost $300 and something thousand. Yeah, okay, maybe use it within your fund balance because that's a one-time thing. It's not coming back next year, so you don't have to go and raise taxes to keep up with that loss of revenue. The next page is once again, profit and loss on your general fund, your school, and that shows your revenues for the year, your real estate. And the difference between the revenue recognition that you see on this type of format, the fund financial statements compared to the government-wide, revenue for the government-wide financial statements is your tax assessment. If you assess $70 million, that is your revenue recognized on the government-wide financial statements. But in the fund financial statements, you assess $70 million, but you only collect $69 million. You'll see $69 million there, and the rest is a receivable on the balance sheet. So you collect monies that are from other previous years too within that number. So you would collect monies that were assessed in 2016, you collected them in 2018. They're not all from your assessment for this one year. So in there you'll see other taxes, penalties and interest, licenses, all types of revenues, and all the expenditures you'll see in here. The salaries, the payroll, all types of benefits, your parks and recreation. And in here also a key change within the fund financial statements opposed to the government-wide is you budget your principal payments and your interest payments within your financial statements. They're an expense on these books. Those principal payments, like I had mentioned on those bonds, you have to budget for them because you have to have the cash to make that $500,000 principal payment. So you'll see that $3,745,000, those are all principal payments that you have to have the cash for. You can't say, well, it's something we owe down the road and we'll pay it when we can. Obviously, you have to have the cash for that and for the interest. So coming down here, you'll see the town had a surplus of $1,100,000 in compared, revenues less their expenses for the year, and that adds to your previous fund balance of $11,578,000 and brings your fund balance up to $12,678,000. Same thing with the school side, same type of format. School revenues, expenditures, obviously the transfer from the town for their appropriation is a negative on the town side, it's a plus on the school side. School had a surplus of $482,000 for the year, which increased their previous fund balance of $544,000 to $1,027,000. And all these other governmental funds, these are all the other funds that are too small to be called major funds within the financial statements. So the Government Accounting Standard Board says, put that in the back of the report in detail so everyone can see what they are, but roll them up into the front here as one, column, one number. So when we go, to the back, I'll show you that these are all your capital project funds. Once again, if you were, you went out and the dollar expenditure wasn't too large to make it classify as a major fund, your capital projects funds would be in here. Your other special revenue funds, if you got once again, a COPS More grant, it's too small to be a major fund, it would be in here also. So all those types of special revenue funds, the Title I grants that the school gets every year, they're all rolled up into this column on the balance sheet and the revenue side. And then the next page is the reconciliation page. How do you get from your fund accounting to your government-wide financial statements? So it shows how that $3,323,000 that you see on page 17 over in the bottom right corner there, how do you get to the $106,000 that's on the government-wide financial statements? There you go. You're throwing on your capital assets. Now you're taking depreciation as an expense because you buy a police car on your fund financial statements. That $60,000 is an expense. You got to pay for that. But on the government-wide financial statements, you take that, you put it up on the balance sheet, that's $60,000, and you decide, is that car going to last 3 years now? So you depreciate that $60,000 over 3 years. So you take 1/3 of that every year, and that's that $3,805,000 you see there. That's a piece of that. So that goes as an expense. So you're writing off that vehicle, this building, over 40 years, the other vehicles, public work vehicles, things like that. You're writing them off over a set period of time. Then you'll see other big things in here, your bond principal payments. That's a plus to this because bond principal payments aren't an expense. They're a reduction of long-term debt. So they come back on as a plus. The interest is expense. Yeah, exactly. We don't take the interest now and put it as a plus because that's expense on both sides, fund financial statements and your government-wide financial statements. Exactly. You'll see in here your changes in your pension also. When you have, obviously you have your pension invested, but fluctuations in the market, benefit payments, things like that, the valuation goes up and down on that unfunded liability. So that can be a plus, that can be a minus. And part of it's out of your control because the school system is with the state. If the state falls behind, their funding, their investments that they don't come to fruition of what they feel it would be, that adversely affects the whole state. Because now that negative reduction goes into everyone's financial statements. So though that piece is out of your control. The town plans, obviously, those types are more under the control of the town, but, still market situations, things like that adversely affect, or on a positive side, can affect your liability.
So what you're telling me is if the state is using 7.5% as an assumption and they only make back 7%, then that 0.5% that they lose on their end is figured into our net revenues.
Yes. Those changes in assumptions can adversely affect. If they went and said, oh, we're going to make 10% every year, obviously that would be a problem. And even the agencies look at those types of assumptions. If you're using unrealistic numbers, they're gonna, and you're not using the standards that are out there, they're gonna notice that too, and they're gonna say, and we would notice that too. We would make a comment saying, the standard out there is 7%. The town's using 12% as a number. We would probably make a comment in that, and maybe even modify the opinion, because we would say you're artificially reducing that long-term liability, which you're not. I would say something if you were. Yeah, exactly. The town is using the normal standard. Yeah. So obviously you want to be conservative. You don't want to make unrealistic assumptions, because then that could adversely affect the financial statements in the long run. So these are all the major things that you see. How do you get from your fund financial statements down to the government-wide financial statements and get to that $106,000 that we saw earlier on the government-wide financials. Then moving over to the statement of net position for the proprietary funds, they call them. Proprietary funds are funds that obviously are supposed to be self-sustaining. They're not supposed to be getting monies from other, they rely on sewer assessments, long-term sewer assessments, user fees, those types of things. And those are set. I mean, those can be changed. Those are types of revenue sources that are supposed to be tweaked here and there to make sure that the fund itself can sustain itself. And as you know, it has been brought up, the sewer fund has been basically borrowing money from the town, and that's that internal balance you see there. Going down in the middle of the page there under the liability section, due to other funds, okay, that $2,600,000. The sewer fund presents every expense it is charged with. None of this expense on the sewer, even though there's a $2 million liability basically to the town is not absorbing that in their financial statements. All they're saying is the sewer owes me $2,600,000. And that's all. It does not reflect that, the fund balance of the town is being absorbed up because it's you owe me, and so it's shown on the balance sheet here. And all the capital assets of the sewer, because this is full accrual even in the fund financial statements. So the construction in progress, the depreciable assets, all the sewer lines that were put on Arnold Road, all those types of assets were put in these financial statements, in all its liabilities. It went to clean water and borrowed money for these types of capital additions. Those bonds are on here also. And those bonds are obviously long-term bonds that will be paid off over the years, but the interest is charged as an expense. So you'll see in the net position of the sewer, the net position of the sewer is $11,057,000 in the plus. But what they make the presentation show is, okay, the invested in capital assets, it takes all the assets less the liabilities, meaning the borrowed money, and gives you a net number there, because they say that money or that net position can't be used to pay bills. You can't go and sell the infrastructure to finance, activities. So that's why they restrict those types of fund balances in that category. So you can't say, oh, those are available funds. We can use them to spend for operations. Next page is the profit and loss statement showing the revenues coming in, assessment, user fees. You'll see the $2.6 million in revenues, all the other types of operational costs, the monies that are paid to the town of Warwick to process, sewer items that go over there, those types of things. So you pay fixed fees to the town of Warwick for that. That's in there. West Warwick, sorry. Yeah, West Warwick. Yes, to West Warwick. So you pay those fees in there. So those fees are in there. Chemicals you buy for processing, sewer treatment, things like that. Those are in there. You'll see the interest expense for the interest that you pay on the loans from bonding, bonds or clean water. So you'll come down to a change in net position of $232,000, a deficit that year. One thing you'll see in here is depreciation of $648,000. Depreciation is a non-cash item. Doesn't mean you're writing a check for that depreciation. That's the long-term look of those assets being expensed. So when you spend $1 million to put intercept the pipes on the roads, that $1 million gets depreciated over 30 years, usually the life of what they think those assets will be, and that's what that is. So you're not putting out cash, so it's not a cash flow item. And speaking of cash flow, on the next page is a cash flow statement. And that kind of takes the financial statements and puts them in a cash, instead of full accrual, it puts them in a cash flow statement. And the internal service fund, that is the new item that you have this year that is for the WB self-insurance fund that the school has with the WB Community Health. So what they do is they pay, and this is the state wanted the school to do this. What the school does is they pay a fixed premium every month to West Bay. Might be $1 million a month, something like that. But do they use up that $1 million in claims and those types of services? If they don't, you get a plus on your balance sheet side. So the school has been accruing this type of plus on their balance sheet for a while. Now the state said they want you to put it in an internal service fund and present it this way. So that's what this internal service fund is, showing the asset that the school has with West Bay. And West Bay requires you to have a certain amount of premium within their community health program, because many cities and towns are part of that. So they make you keep a certain reserves within them, because they don't want you, and they readjust your premiums every year. You can go and request monies back from them if you have excess reserves, but that wouldn't be a revenue source to the school. It would be a reduction of their asset that they have with the books. So that couldn't say, give me back $500,000, all of a sudden I have revenue of $500,000. It would just reduce that money. So, and then on the next page is a presentation of the statement of net position for all your fiduciary assets. And those are all your pension funds, the school, the town, these are the private plans that the town has. And your private purpose trust funds. These are the Waterman Fund, those types of trust funds that you have within the town. So you'll see here the pension trust funds is in aggregate here because they're in detail in the back of the report. And you'll see each column in the back of the report that rolls up. I'm sorry. Let's see, we go with the major components, the sewer, the self-insurance. Okay, yeah, that's the self-insurance is. But the trust funds are not on there, so they are on the financial statements, though. So you'll see the detail of that within the back of the financial statements, which we'll get to. And then you'll see on the changes in fiduciary net position, you'll see here employer contributions, plan member contributions. Those are all the revenue sources that come in. Then you'll see the investments that the town has, interest and dividends, increase or decrease in the fair market value of the investment. You'll see there, obviously, there was a plus in earnings, less investment expense. Benefits paid out, the $7 million too. Yes.
Paul, in light of time and everybody's time here tonight, if we have questions that are not on the presentation, can we just move along a little bit faster? I understand that there's a lot of great information in here that's great for everybody to understand, but can we just stick to the presentation
do
a little
that.
bit faster? Thank you.
Okay, and on the last page, no. So anyways, you'll see how that flows within. So there was an increase, change in net position of $4 million, where the trust fund went up overall $4 million. And there's notes to the financial statements. I suggest, you read that. It has a lot of great information in there regarding the details of the financial statements, the changes in your liabilities, things like that. I had mentioned earlier that we do a single audit, and we give an opinion on that single audit, which we look at all your federal funding just to make sure that it's being spent correctly. Not every one of the grants we look at specifically. We pick major funds, and last year we picked, let's see, last year we picked the two of the education funds and also one of the town major funds, the medical assistance program. We looked at that. And we did not have any findings this year. We gave an unmodified opinion, where last year we did have findings in the medical program, that medical assistance program, which you see stated in the report as prior year findings. Last year it was a current year finding. We looked at that again this year because we look at risk. We say, okay, was there a problem before? Is there still a problem? Let's look at it again. So we looked at it again. There are good corrective action plans that were done with that program, so we did not have a major comment for it this year. You'll see notes, other information, notes to the financial statements, supplementary information. Supplementary information is the detail reporting of the financial statements. All the detail of those special revenue funds, capital project funds, things like that are in the back. So if you want to look at individual funds, you can look at those within the back of the financial statements. Okay, and finally we have questions. If you would have any questions you'd like to. I know there was a lot and I went over a lot of detail forgive me for that if it was too much, but
It's a lot to absorb.
it is, there is. I mean, this report is 59 pages, and obviously it takes a long time to gather information and, bring it all into a report.
Well, I thank you for all the effort and work you put into it, and presenting that to us. Does anybody have any questions for the council? We have a lot to absorb, and if we have any questions, we'll forward them to our finance director, and hopefully if they can't be answered, I'm sure he'll be in contact with you.
Yep.
But I thank you once again. If there's no questions from the council, I appreciate your time. Thank you again.
Okay, and,
Thanks, Paul.
and thank you very much for, once again, allowing us to be here. Thank you.
Very good.
And if anyone's interested, this will be posted on the website, the entire audit tomorrow.
I
So
think-
it will be available.
I think this warrants a 5-minute break.
Okay, thank you.
Mics are on.
Okay, the next item on the agenda. Item number 6, B6, annual report presentation by the planning commission. Who would be giving that? Is Caroline not giving it this evening?
Planning Commission?
Nobody's giving the report.
We came to hear it. I can't hear you.
They came, yeah, put your mic on.
All right, sorry about that. We're gonna have to table that and have Caroline.
Nobody,
Wells, somebody from the planning
wait a
department.
minute, there's nobody,
We've had a chance to look over, we have a copy of the report, but would have thought there would have been. Yeah, absolutely, please do, your planning commission,
Chairman,
chairman.
We were given a draft copy at our last planning commission meeting and told we weren't to
excuse
discuss
me,
it until she
excuse
presented.
me, name and address for the record, please.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you,
Russell Crossman, 11 Silver Maple Drive. We were given an advanced copy. We had a draft copy to approve at our meeting last week, and she said to us, don't discuss it with anybody until I present it to the council. Said, do you want one of us to present it to the council? She goes, no, I will present it to the council
All right,
next
so-
week. So we came to see the presentation, support
Was there
her.
a mix-up in communication here, obviously?
I will find out what the issue was, because my understanding was she was gonna be here for this, so.
Okay, so let's.
Motion to table.
Yeah, can I just ask, because it says planning commission is supposed to give it, so why was the planning director writing it and giving it?
Heads the
So I'm a little
commission.
confused on how that works.
Well, I saw that too, and that's why I asked her, do you want us to present it?
Yeah.
And she said, no, she was gonna do it.
All right, so,
Okay, so I get the, my.
It is something, excuse me, I'm sorry, Councilwoman Baker, it's a document that she prepared. The commission did not prepare it. It was prepared by staff.
Because on the I don't remember if it's the charter or the ordinance, it says planning commission to
Present.
prepare and
All right, well,
so that's
obviously-
why I was confused.
all right, yeah, and you got a good point. We're not gonna clarify it tonight, so the town, town manager will definitely look into this matter and, find out what happened, and we'll just put it on the agenda for next meeting.
Okay.
Sorry it didn't work out, but, we'll. and-
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So, the chair will entertain a motion to table this.
So moved.
Do we have a motion? We have a second? Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah,
All
I,
opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Okay, the next item. Madam Clerk, we're on, well, I'm doing your job for you, so I'll.
I don't hear a complaint.
Yeah.
All right, do you want to go to C1?
Yes.
Resolution creating Adopt-A-Spot and Adopt-A-Roadway programs, applications and procedures.
And I believe, Kevin, you have some information on that, so if you'd be so kind to come on up and give us a rundown.
Geez, look, we got a department head that showed up for a meeting he was supposed to be at. Thank you, Mr. McGee.
Thank you, Mr. Cody. Ladies and gentlemen, what I had presented to the town manager and asked for a presentation is to adopt a townwide program that mirrors the state program for the state roads. We all have been talking about budgetary issues. We do have many organizations, some of the schools, religious organizations that have to do community service as part of their graduation. And we have programs, whether it be, like we discussed at the budget meeting the other night, maybe, someone wants to adopt a portion of the greenway to clean and maintain. It could be the park at Arnold Road. It could be other areas that are in town that are on town properties. And it's a program that is mirrored specifically from RIDOT. It's already been mirrored. We put together the package. I think you all have, or should have, the information with you, what the applications would be, waiver forms for any minors and for any organizations. And we would just Raina and I from Parks and Recreation will work together on identifying this and administering the program.
I mean, one of my concerns was the waiver. My mic is on, yeah. One of my concerns was, the waivers, and I see you have a waiver in there for the responsibility from anybody getting hurt on it. But it's a great idea. I drive through a lot of areas in different towns and see some nice, areas that traffic stops or, stop signs that beautifies the town. So, I mean, I don't have any issues with it. Is there any discussion that anybody might have with the?
Well, it's kind of the feeling the thought I had with the ball fields, making it a voluntary. How about adopt a field, adopt a park?
Could be
You know,
adopt a- it could be adopt
for
a
the different- Some
cemetery.
of the sports organizations, that way they have take maintenance of the property.
We have a lot of historical cemeteries throughout town that are not part of perpetual care. I'm sure we could work out a program where if we have
Great
enough people,
idea, adopt a cemetery.
adopt a cemetery to clean a cemetery. So
right.
it's a beginning. And again,
paying
with the
fields.
with the budgetary issues, I mean, we have a couple that are pretty easy to spot. We have the small park on Tioga Avenue on our road on the west side, the AMVets. That was adopted some years ago. We have intermittent maintenance on it. We have the one across the street, across from it, that is part of the new project that someone could adopt. We have the area that's over by where the gazebo is. We have the other end of Sandy Bottom Road. I believe Ionati's has one of the islands. I mean,
One of the
so
islands,
so we
and-
have that
and on our
available in
check.
town, but that's all state. But we have town issues that we can do also. And again, budgetarily wise, why not try to get the residents who wish to do this and have some sweat equity and participation in the town?
I
Go
actually
forward.
think it's a good idea. You'll have a little sign out.
Correct.
Where it represents the organization. Does anybody from the council have any questions? Absolutely.
Yeah, I just have a couple questions.
Sure.
In here it says, who's going to be reaching out to the groups? Because it wasn't defined. Is it going to be Parks and Rec? Are you going to have certain groups, or is it just going to be?
No,
how
we're
you-
going to put this, we're going to publicize it, and it's going to be between Parks Recreation and Public Works. We're going to work together to get it
Okay,
out
so
to
you're not
everybody.
choosing, you're not, so it'll
Oh,
be
no, we're gonna-
anyone
we're
can
gonna bring it
reach
out to
out
whoever
to
wants
you?
it. If they meet the
Okay.
criteria, then they're welcome to be adopting a spot or a roadway.
Oh, terrific. The other thing, I did notice that on the state applications, you almost mirrored everything. There were just a
Yes.
couple of things with the liability that was left out, so I double-checked. I wanted to just make
Okay.
sure that I didn't, on the Adopt-A-Spot, there needs, on the state application, it says there is no fee to adopt a spot. However, the cost of all planting material, the sign, if any, and maintenance of the location are the applicant's responsibility. Would we be able to add that on the Adopt-A-Spot application?
We can, yes.
Just so, you know, we.
This
if-
this
if-
was just was a proposal to you folks.
Okay.
To see if it was something that you're amenable to. Absolutely, this is not carved in stone. We
Well,
can make,
it's funny you brought that up, that point, because my only question was, are we in a position to be able to supply any of the materials that may be needed if it needs to be reloomed and reseeded? And that's what you,
It was-
that's
I
what
just-
you're
I-
asking about.
Yeah,
So-
'cause I-
Your
that's-
minds think alike. You know, that's what it is.
Why, thank you.
Can we get that on the record?
Thank you, yeah. It's been a long time
Let's
since
see,
I've been
it
called
is
a
what,
great mind.
20 of 9.
I mean,
That's a good
Write
point.
it
So,
down,
I mean,
write it on all your pieces
I'm
of
just gonna
paper.
tattoo it, I'm not even gonna write
That's
it.
fantastic, I love
If
it.
that
I
could
know, I
be-
have another couple questions.
yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Also, proof of liability on the state, it doesn't have it on this application, and it does on the states, it says proof of liability, naming the town of Coventry as an additional insured.
yes,
Could we have,
absolutely.
okay. They also, is this going to be this Adopt-A-Spot, is it going to be on the state? It says a 2-year maintenance schedule. Is this going to be open-ended for these folks? Or,
It'll be open-ended. We're not
okay,
doing exactly what the state says.
okay. All right.
And if a group decides to back out of it, you'll be able to have another group adopt that spot
Yeah,
for whatever
if
reason.
you look on page 3, we do have under safety, insurance, and liability, all group members must sign a release before participating to roadside cleanups, and a copy of this release form is attached.
Page 3.
We don't have it.
We have page 55.
That's under the Adopt-A-Roadway portion on page, well,
356,
I don't know what your numbers are, but,
Yeah, we have,
56 and 78.
so, yeah, we can, again, we'll go over this with council, to make sure that we have all of the liability issues addressed for the town.
and with the Adopt-A-Roadway program and the cleanup, I did notice on the state that they did have an age. It says 11 years old and up. Are we going to do that? I mean, we're not going to have like 8-year-olds on roadways. I mean, can we?
Granddaughter needs something to do.
No, not playing it. No. Could we follow that with the state? Have
Yeah,
it?
we have the minor release form, we could actually add some more verbiage to
Yeah, it
put
had
an age
it had
group
it
on
on the states, and that's why.
But once again, we didn't want to prohibit, whether it be Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts or Cub Scouts, as long as they had adults there for supervision. So again, depending on where we don't, they're a little bit more stringent because a lot of them are talking about highways. A lot of the town roads are secondary roads, so we don't have the liability and the speed of vehicles that we would do on state roads.
Has the trust, have you gone through the trust at all? Have they signed off on
This
that?
is just first time bringing it to you folks to see if there's interest. We'll go through all of those mechanisms as we move forward.
Okay.
I mean,
I think it's a
we
great
sound
idea.
very interested. If we just dot our Ts and
Absolutely.
we dot our Is and cross our Ts, just make sure our liability's all set. Maybe if you could just revamp that.
Yep, I'll meet
Well,
with-
the thing is, we weren't going to go through all the additional work to do it unless we knew there was an interest in doing it. And then we'll do the rest of all of
Kind of
the,
getting the idea there's quite an interest with the council. I mean,
I can see that you guys think it's, I mean, that's what we were looking for, to make sure that it is something that you'd like to see
you
before we
have a
go through
list
the
right
additional
now?
workload.
Of all the,
Not until you folks said yes. No.
No, I didn't know if you already came up
No,
with some sort of,
no.
you just started rambling some off, so I didn't know if you
Well, I
already
mean,
had
those are pretty
Okay.
evident to what we can see, but we go forward, whether it be Hopkins Hill Road, some of the roads that we've just done some major work on that may need some additional help, whether it be trash pickup or whether there's a few things that we could do, but other than state roads. And right now, a lot of the state roads are covered through the RIDOT program, but none of the town roads or town areas are covered. So we have a lot of area to move on this.
And
I think it's a great idea beautifying this town. I don't know if we need to make a vote on this. It's just basically, we're not having a finalized plan or anything yet. So, Solicitor, are we correct in?
Yes, I drew a resolution for tonight, just in case you wanted to adopt it. There are a couple, I mean, it's substantially complete, but
If the concept is okay that you folks want to accept through a resolution that the concept, and let council and the town manager, the counselor and the town manager work with us to finalize the information that was brought forward.
Finalize the paperwork that that an applicant has to fill out.
All right, so with that being said, I mean,
I'd like to propose a resolution giving the DPW director, in conjunction with Parks and Recreation, to move forward in finalizing a plan for an Adopt-A-Spot and Adopt-A-Roadway plan and bringing it back to council for final approval.
all right, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
second,
We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thanks, Kev.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda, Madam Clerk, number 2, please. C2.
Tax assessor additions and abatements.
It's all right, hasty. Good evening.
Good evening.
The only thing different about this one I have tonight is that we do not have any additions this time, and I did write in there on the memo, the reason for that is that the typical additions are from prorated new construction as well as supplemental bills when property changes hands, and all that stuff sort of stops at 12/31 because we're going to start the new tax roll now.
Once again, it's a good job putting that together. I like the way you organized it.
Thank you. I
Anybody
try.
from the council, any questions? Will Chair entertain a motion to accept?
Motion.
And I'll second it.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. That was
Thank you.
an easy one, John.
Chris, stay there.
Chris, yeah.
right?
Okay. The
Thanks,
next
boss.
item, I guess, will be under section D, number 3, Madam Clerk.
Resolution authorizing the interim town manager to execute the proposed settlement agreement with ALA Coventry, LLC, ALA Coventry versus Town of Coventry, K.C. 12-0266.
Just give us a quick rundown.
Sure. So as everyone obviously knows, we did discuss some of the more detailed issues in the executive session, but what this is it's an older case that has been brought to our attention. We did work with the opposing counsel and came to an agreement to settle the case for a small amount, for a $2,000 abatement off of their fourth quarter tax bill.
And we are aware of it. We did have discussion in executive session, and I think this is in the best interest of everybody, all parties concerned, and the
I agree.
taxpayers. So is there any questions from anybody from the council? Seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a sec? Yes.
one second. I just, on the resolution, it just says affirms, the town council hereby affirms the town manager. Does it need to say interim town manager? We have it on some others. we're kind of back and forth on some of them.
I don't think so.
Interim
It says
versus
town
town.
manager, not interim. Is that
Does that make a
understood?
difference,
Or?
Mr. Solicitor?
Because later on in the evening,
It says
No, it
town
says town
manager.
manager.
just
Oh,
because
well,
some
these-
of the other resolutions later on say interim, that's why I'm asking. I just
We
figured
can
be
write interim
consistent.
in, and for consistency, writing interim in is fine. He
Okay.
still
So-
serves with the same powers.
All right, so I don't have a problem with putting interim town manager on it, so we have a motion, we have a second.
We have a second.
We have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all opposed, ayes have it, motion carries. Okay, the next,
Thank you.
get my paperwork mixed up here, the next item on the agenda would be number 4.
Resolution authorizing the interim town manager to award, bid, and execute a contract for cemetery grounds maintenance to Coastal Companies, LLC, 85 Crandal Avenue, Westerly, Rhode Island.
Yes,
Good evening. We went out to bid for the cemetery maintenance services for perpetual care. We received 4 bidders, and Coastal Companies was the lowest qualified bidder for the amount of $39,020 for the 2019-2020 season, $39,352.65 for the 2020-2021 season, and $39,702.65 for the 21-22 season. This is within the budget. The other bids were, for the first year, just so you folks know, I don't know if you have the breakdown, the second bidder was $46,977. The third bidder was $61,920. The third bidder was $79,725, and we had, like I said, the 4 bids, so $39,000 fit within our budget. To continue, was slightly higher than what our last budget, our last contractor was, but
and as you stated before, we still have a lot of historical cemeteries that are not included in perpetual care.
that's correct.
So, yeah, I would love to see a program where we can get some groups working on that also. But anyway, with that being said, we've had a chance to look at it, and you went out to bid, and you're comfortable with this company?
We did the reference checks on them, and they're capable of doing the work.
Okay, are there any questions from the council? Yes.
I do. I don't see John here, so I'll have to ask Ed. I mean, maybe you would know.
Try.
Can you explain the Waterman Fisk Fund, the cemetery fund?
No?
Okay.
This is funded through the operating budget for Public Works. There's nothing to do with the funds.
This is not funded through the Waterman Fisk.
So it's not through the
No, it's through the
Waterman
it's through
Fund?
the operating-
Cemetery fund?
No.
It has
No, it is
nothing
not.
to do that?
As-
Okay.
As the resolution says, this work is maintenance, is perpetual care. This award is funded through Department of Public Works operating budget. We have a line item for this because that's been expended. There is no more cemetery fund, perpetual care fund.
There was a perpetual care fund, there still is a perpetual care fund with a very small amount of money in it.
Yeah, 29,000, that's what's in the audit books. That's why I'm trying to figure out.
Exactly, you
So
didn't know
where is
what
that
John,
money?
what
We-
John is attempting to reconstitute that fund, and he's looking at some ways to bring that in, so this will start being self-sustaining. In the meantime, he didn't want to drain that completely for this year's and bring it back down to a zero. But this has been funded through the town account for the last several years because of the fact that there has been very little money left in that account over what's needed to fund this. So that's why it's
It
been done
can't
this
cover
way.
1 year of the
It won't
cemetery
cover
needs.
1 year of the
No,
contract.
so
No.
I'm just trying to figure out, so
Yeah.
it's always,
It hasn't been funded through that fund in several
For
years.
3 years, yes.
but isn't that the purpose? Was that
What
the
it was
purpose?
supposed to be, and that's why John's working on trying to come up with some ways, looking at some things that we may do to, where we're going to do to try to increase revenue coming into that. Again, that was based on these fees that were set years ago and put into that were
Yeah, the cost of doing it was
ridiculously
That's when-
low.
That's when Louis Prue and his guys were
It was
doing
like
it for $150
$50
a
for
year.
perpetual year.
Yeah,
They pay it once.
it's,
It's not an annual, and there was just no way that could self-sustain itself.
yeah.
Right, there's no annual revenue coming into that fund to self-sustain it.
We can't all be talking together. I want everybody to hear, so please, one at a time. Sorry. Okay, go ahead.
The 41 cemeteries that are worked on, are those all town-owned cemeteries?
No, perpetual care. This is not it's not about ownership, it's about perpetual care where the lots are located. And there's a breakdown showing what lots are done in each cemetery. Some of the cemeteries are so small that it wouldn't be prudent to just do three lots when it's only a 20 by 20 cemetery, so it's easy for them to go in and just do the entire cemetery.
So these people, the people that own or that bury their families, they pay a fee
They paid a fee. A fee, in some cases,
years ago.
60 years ago. That's something we're looking at, if there's a way that we can actually start getting a consistent revenue, if there's any way we're looking at all of it on some of the contracts that were done, so we could actually start, hopefully, to go back and try and get some type of annual out of them, but,
So you're actually trying to revamp it.
well, we're looking at what we can to try to reconstitute this fund, so we're not putting it out of town general fund. But in the meantime, we have an obligation. These contracts were signed. We cannot just
Do you have
not
copies
do
of
it.
those contracts? I'm just trying to understand. So these are privately owned cemeteries?
Some of them are, yes.
And
And again,
where-
it's indicated in the list that it'll call for a cemetery with its location and how many graves are in
I think
there.
we have that list.
No, you don't get that. You didn't get that list, but
No,
I'm
we
sure
don't.
Mr. McGee could
Oh, I'm sure
provide you with
it was
one.
part of the RFP.
No, we don't, it's not in
You
our
didn't have-
packet.
okay, not in your
Yeah, that's
packet,
why I
Yeah.
was asking.
I'll be willing to give this.
Oh, that's okay.
Some of them say all the cemeteries, and some of them tell you exactly how many graves per cemetery.
You don't have that.
No, we didn't get that. But if you could, is that extra?
Maybe we could get a copy so all of us could have a copy. Okay, and I just have, because I was a little confused on this, Kevin. Now, for bidder number 4, for the spring cleanup and the fall cleanup, the spring cleanup is $25,118.10. And the fall,
I'm sorry, which bidder are you talking about?
the number 4 coastal companies?
Oh, the current one, yes.
Now, is that for?
All 3 years.
All 3
Yeah,
years?
we had
That's
to,
what-
that's why we held off. We had to qualify that. It's not an annual basis. He actually added up because it's all 3 years.
Because the
spring-
others, that's why I was like, that totaled up 188 hours. I'm like,
Yep, and that's what held me back when I had to qualify his bid and when I did the reference check. And he
Okay.
came in and met with me and qualified that was all 3 years.
that's okay. I
For the
wanted to
spring
make
and the
sure.
fall, yes.
All right. That was a little confusing.
All
All
right, so
right.
you're comfortable with this company then? And like I said, it
Yes.
has to be done, I mean, until we can come up with a plan. You actively are working on trying to
We are.
revamp it.
One of the things that we discovered when we
Comfortable
started
till
going
they,
through.
comfortable till they prove you're wrong. You don't
That's
know
all.
until you see them work.
Yeah.
All right, so, that being said, the chair will entertain a motion. Yeah, okay.
One other quick question. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem.
I'm sorry. The fall cleanup, it says does that go until when? It says October. Typically all the leaves, are they coming in November, picking up all the leaves and cleaning up?
In the fall, depending on when they're all down, yes.
Okay, so that's not that,
Same thing in the springtime. They'll come in the springtime before they start. They'll do a spring cleanup before they start cutting.
okay.
After they're done with their cutting in the fall, they'll do the fall cleanup.
All right, I just want to make sure that they're not ending right in October and we're going to have all these leaves in there and everything.
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
And that's a department, that's something that you oversee yourself, the department.
Unfortunately, yes.
Another one of your, okay. So does anybody else have any questions?
No.
You have any more? No, that's okay. Ask, that's what we're here for, to ask the questions. So, seeing no questions, the chair will entertain a motion to accept.
Motion?
Do we have a second? We have a motion and we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Kevin.
The next item on the agenda, I believe, would be D6, please, Madam Clerk.
Resolution authorizing the interim town manager to sign an agreement for police officer disability pension.
Mr. Manager, would you want to just mention that?
It's, a short description. We have a police officer that is involved with an on-duty injury that prevents him from continuing his duties as an active police officer. And this is a disability pension for that, for the direct job-related.
And we had discussed this in executive session, so with the officer's privacy also, we've discussed, and warrant, the disability. So I guess with that being said, if there's no other questions,
Motion to approve.
motion to approve. Do we have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda will be D7, Madam Clerk.
Resolution affirming the purchase of 12 tasers and funding of sole source procurement under Title 45, Chapter 55.
Colonel, would you be so kind to give us a little explanation?
Sure. Our tasers that we currently have are exceeding their shelf life, I guess is the word. We bought them in 2011, 12 timeframe, and they're generally good. They're under warranty for 5 years, so now they're stretched out beyond that, and they're starting to fail. So there's a lot of internal components. I guess the best way they described it is it's like a smartphone. When you can't really update the software inside of a smartphone after a certain time, it stops functioning at the high level. So
Yeah, at this age, Colonel, I would venture to guess that you're getting to the end of their serviceability.
they are, absolutely. Yeah. So we'd like to enter into a 5-year plan we're going to buy them to replace those, but Taser does a 5-year plan where we could make small purchases over 5 years to pay for them.
And this comes out of your budget, you've already.
It does.
All right, does anybody else have any questions on this? Need an item, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, no, listen, I'm glad because I'm a firm.
Yeah, I would say that you could bring it in here and demonstrate that Councilman Cody, you know,
Just for the record, Councilman Cody has had it demonstrated on him before.
You did?
Once voluntarily. We're not going to discuss the rest of the times.
But I was going to ask if they go bad from use or non-use.
Well, we do use them. They're a good
Listen,
tool.
I'm a big supporter of non-lethal. I
As are
really
we.
am.
Yeah.
Beanbag guns, whatever it takes, rubber bullets. Listen.
all right, with that being said, if there's no other questions from the Colonel, Chair entertain a motion.
Adamantly motion, adamant.
Thank
We have
you.
a second.
I'll second it, bro.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Thank you
Opposed?
very much.
Ayes have it, motion carries.
Thank you, Colonel.
Thank you, Colonel.
Colonel, thank you. The next item on the agenda is public comment. We will limit public comment to 3 minutes. And I see Mr. Colonian, you would like to speak, so name and address for the record.
Good evening, Mr. President. I'm Rick Colunian, 607 Black Rock Road. Just something quick. I saw your ad. It's in the Times, I guess, looking for members for boards and commissions. Included in that list is the Board of Canvassers. And I just wanted to double check. It's funny, I didn't get a letter this year. Usually in February we get a letter. That's prescribed by state statute, I believe. You have to send a letter to the party chairs for both Republican and Democrat. We each submit 5 names, and then you have to pick from the list.
Okay, I'm not aware of that. Is that correct, Mr. Solicitor?
I think Mr. Colonian might be correct. I know we don't.
And I know it was just an oversight. I just didn't want you to go down the wrong path and then have somebody challenge that and go from there.
Yeah, I can check into it and.
Usually I get a
appreciate
letter
your,
either from the manager or the clerk. I've
your
gotten
insight.
both. So it's, I think 1781 is the statute.
Who in the past sent you the letter? Was it
You're
the
right.
Town clerk?
I believe I've gotten them from the clerk until we had Manager Waters, and I think he sent the last one. So I
Okay.
think if you look back 2 years around the February timeframe, you might find one in your file somewhere. And, you know, it's just a blanket letter. And unfortunately, the time constraint, because I don't want to just submit 5 names without having a meeting, and then I've got meeting notice, so I'm not sure we're going to be able to get this done for you before the end of the month. I don't know if there's a time
I
constraint.
think
for the
they
appointment.
serve until their
That's
successors are
fine. Then
appointed.
let's just go through the process and get it right.
All right, so we'll absolutely look into that.
It's
and,
not a problem.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Is there any other comments from the public? Seeing none, hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All against?
I believe they
Ayes
do
have it.
that.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
December.